Science journalist Lynne Peeples did something extraordinary. She spent 10 days in a nuclear bunker exposed only to dim red light, but no blue or other visible wavelength of light. She also rid the space of all clocks or other time-indicating devices and even avoided having any human contact. What she learned opened up numerous questions on how to best manage our day-to-day light exposure, wavelengths, and the implications they have on the quality of sleep, our moods, even various aspects of health and performance. After these sorts of unique experiences, along with discussions on circadian rhythms with numerous scientists working on this topic, Lynne comes to some unique conclusions. Lynne is author of the book, The Inner Clock, Living in Sync with Our Circadian Rhythms, where she explores the role of purposeful management of your circadian rhythm, your inner clock, for management of energy, focus, and mood. Here, Lynne and I talk about her novel insights, along with practical advice on how to better manage your light exposure and circadian rhythm. Welcome, Lynne. Thanks for joining me. I know you came. I heard about you through Martha Carlin, and she has some terrific ideas about your special insights into circadian rhythm and related type topics. How'd you get involved in this in the first place?
Well, I think the roots of it really go back to growing up in Seattle. So I grew up in this place where the winters were, very long and very dark. I, like a lot of us, was at a high school that started at 7:30 in the morning, which for weeks of the year meant going to school in the dark. And I always had this sense that, I didn't sleep super well. And then I had this ebb and flow throughout the year in my mood and in my energy, and just felt kind of out of whack. And then it wasn't until I moved away from Seattle and went to college in Minnesota, where it was in the wintertime, it was very cold, but also very bright. And I just remember starting to feel better. And then it was moving back to Seattle, which was about 12 years ago now. I had an opportunity to tour the Mariners ballpark. Then it was called Safeco Field, but they had just installed circadian lighting in the locker room. And I had no idea what that was about, but it was also an opportunity to go to my favorite ballpark where my home team played and tour around. So I went in there, learned about this lighting that they had installed, that they would brighten and enhance in the blue wavelengths before the baseball games, and then dim and warm the hues of the lights after the games. So it was supposed to, energize the players before the games, calm them down after, help them sleep. And I was intrigued about what was this circadian thing about, and could just the idea behind this help explain some of my, lifelong struggles with energy and sleep. And then, things exploded. I just started connecting a lot of dots, talking to hundreds of scientists about how we have disconnected ourselves from the natural cycles and everything that is doing to our bodies.
So you subscribe to this notion that early morning blue is essential for alertness, concentration, etc.?
Yeah, and for just setting our clocks to the natural cycles. So, right, it's like the kind of direct impact of that light on our energy levels and everything, and then plus setting us up for success throughout that day and the next. Absolutely. It's just one part of the equation, though.
How are you managing blue later in the day?
Yeah, so my day, I really do, as you said, ascribe to trying to get that first light of the day, whether that's trying to get outside, which is the best, or being close to a window. As you can see, at least right now, I have a big picture window right by my desk, so I'm super fortunate there. And then also kind of filling in where daylight can't reach with some of the modern lights that do have some ability to enhance and have more blue color. And then at the end of the day, I do the opposite. I cut the lights in my apartment. And if I'm over at a friend's house or out and about, sometimes I'm obnoxious and I do wear some blue light blocking glasses. But it's really about, brightening the day and darkening the night. And it's amazing. I hadn't thought about it, but we evolved with these fancy rods in our eyes that really can adapt to darkness. And so I can get by with just these electric candles that I have around my apartment, which just give off this warm glow, right? And that's, it's enough to see. So yeah, there's many tools out there.
Have you had a chance to incorporate red infrared into your schedule?
So that's sort of outside the scope of my book, but I do have some interest in that and have been sort of researching it on the side and do play around with red light. I don't know where the data, I'm sure you know more than I, but it seems like there's some growing data that it can help heal and do various things for our bodies. So I've been using it on some joints that have been less than healthy to see if that helps. But generally speaking, I mean, the red that I used in the scope of circadian rhythms in my book is just for the point that it doesn't affect our circadian rhythms like blue light does. So when I did an experiment where I stayed 10 nights in a nuclear bunker, for example, I had the whole bunker set to just a dim red light because I was experimenting on what would happen to my body. So I wanted to eliminate any sense of daylight. So I use red light.
Oh, tell us more about that. Why did you do that?
Yeah, so I was seeking out a space where I could kind of go to the extreme and cut myself off from any cues that my body could use to tell day from night. Because that's our modern world, and that is really the problem. That's how we're disconnecting ourselves in these rhythms that our bodies evolved to do the right things at the right time without access to the cues, primarily light and dark, while the planet spins. So without that, yeah, we're disrupting our circadian rhythms. So I was trying to cut myself off from daylight, as well as, obviously any clocks that are going to tell me the time, or any other human beings or creatures that also have rhythm that could give me any clues. And the best thing I found was via Airbnb. This man in Arkansas had bought a former Cold War era nuclear missile silo from the government, had gutted it and refurbished it into a fancy Airbnb. And so I got in touch with him and stayed in this, which was it was the command control center for this nuclear missile. I stayed down there for 10 days, and he helped me just, cover every clock that was visible and, set these LED lights to be red and dim, just enough to see, but not enough to mess up my inner clocks.
What happened?
And I also, big important point, I decked my whole body out with various devices that were measuring my rhythms. So I had little buttons taped to me that were measuring my temperature. I was wearing a glucose monitor. I obviously was, as you might guess, wearing a Garmin's and various devices measuring sleep and heart rate. And then at the end of the experiment, so I was uploading all this data, and then I worked with scientists to look at these rhythms to see what actually happened over those 10 days. And yeah, sure enough, my body fell out of sync with the sun. It drifted. And what's more, that these rhythms in my body fell out of sync with each other. And so it's, much like jet lag. So we've all, probably most of us at least, have experienced that to some extent in our lives. But this was essentially an extreme form of it. I, drifted later, which a lot of us naturally do because on average, our inner clocks run a little longer than 24 hours, which is why we need to keep synced to the sun, because it kind of keeps pulling us back to be closer to that 24-hour day. But my heart rate rhythm and my temperature rhythm, these, fell out of sync with each other. And that translated into, I didn't feel so well. My thinking was slower. My coordination was down. I was actually practicing juggling in the bunker. I tried to teach myself to juggle all kinds of interesting things to fill the time. But I was taking notes on a voice recorder and various things, and I could really see from the data afterwards at about the point that I was feeling pretty miserable was when the data showed that I really fell out of sync. And it was also kind of the extent or the amplitude of the rhythms in my body flattened. So I lost rhythm.
What became of mood?
Yeah, the mood followed that too. So it's really a body and brain phenomenon. So I felt more depressed. I felt more anxious. I struggled to sleep. Like it was sort of, I felt like I just kind of wanted to nap all the time. I really lacked that rhythm, that awake during the day, sleepy at night. And then, the positive energy was essentially drained from me.
Did any of your devices give you any kind of feedback on sleep cycles?
Yeah, so I was tracking my sleep cycles. Definitely lost. I mean, if we're talking about the detail, I could see that I had less REM sleep for sure, and heart rate, didn't drop as much at night as it did before the experiment.
No,
So
it's really interesting.
So it's kind of the same, like the amplitude of my rhythms. So that included, heart rate, temperature, and sleep. It was just, everything kind of flatlined.
Would you learn with blood sugar?
Blood sugar, it wasn't as like obvious, but it did fall out of sync too with the other rhythms. And, it's a complicated one because it's like, there's so many factors going in on what you're putting into your body. But yeah, the blood sugar spikes did get kind of a little more extreme because, as we know, if you're not eating when your body is primed to handle those incoming calories, it's not going to, serve you as well. Your insulin and everything is not going to be ready to tackle that. So it's hard to infer too much, but you could see some greater spikes. And again, the overall rhythm was a bit out of sync.
And you managed to maintain a healthy diet during the entire experiment?
I did. I went down there with a bunch of bags of Whole Foods groceries, and the one kind of fun little anecdote that came from that, and this was, I swear, not planned, but it was 2 days before the end of the experiment. I believe I was running low on food. It was dinner time, so I didn't plan this perfectly, right? But I used to always like breakfast for dinner. So I was like, okay, I'm out of like my main dinner foods, but I still have some pancake mix and some blueberries. So I made myself a blueberry pancake for dinner that night. And later, when I went back to the data, it was clear that I was actually eating that blueberry pancake in the morning when everybody above ground was also having breakfast. So I thought that was amusing.
Anything interesting with regards to dream content?
Ooh, that's a good question. I do not remember anything really standing out except, and I did make a note of this, but didn't really do anything with it. I did have moments where I'd see light. Like I'd close my eyes and there'd be kind of these flashes of light. It was almost like my brain was just craving daylight. So I would see these, just really vivid, kind of bright.
Why'd you choose to use a low-level red light the entire time?
Because the science shows that red light is going to be least impactful to our circadian rhythms, because we have these third photoreceptors that were only recently discovered in our eyes, right? And they act separately from our visual system, but they're constantly trying to pick up cues from light and dark. So they're looking for the intensity of light, and they're really keen in on blue wavelengths, because that is the light, the main kind of wavelengths that the sun's pumping out in the middle of the day. It's a full spectrum, of course, but the peak is really in the blue wavelengths. So when you get out to the reds, that's going to be more kind of, end of the day, you're going to get a little more of the red coming through. But it's just less likely to tell your body it's daytime. So that's what the scientists really kind of urge. At the end of the day, you want those warmer hues, and then red light is least likely to confuse your brain.
So you do this crazy 10-day experiment. What happened when you finished, when you left?
Yeah, well, first it was really wild to step up from that bunker and see the sun. Oh my gosh, I was blinded. So my eyes had not seen that for a while. So I was like, I had sunglasses on, and it was cloudy, but I was still kind of blinded by the light, literally. And then it took some days for my body to get back in sync. And again, you can compare this to maybe traveling internationally, because also it's part of my book. I did go to Europe for a while to do some reporting, and I came back, and it was a similar thing of trying to readjust right after, crossing several time zones. So yeah, it was probably about a week before I really got my rhythms back in order and connected again. But yeah, it was really fun. Yeah, an interesting experience, kind of going through those rhythms with the scientists, drawing these diagrams and graphs, looking at how these things matched up or didn't over the course of the time down there.
Did you manage or manipulate your vitamin D at all?
Oh, I ddid not. No, I mean, obviously, yeah, that's one component, right? If I'm not getting any sun, I'm not getting any natural vitamin D. So yeah, maybe that was part of it. Inherently, I was craving that. So I did spend a lot of time outdoors when I got out. I live by a park here in Seattle, and I do like to walk around Green Lake here. And I was doing that a little extra. Plus, I could see color for the first time in weeks, because when you live in dim red light, you don't see much color. So I was really happy to be reunited with color.
I'm glad you made that point about getting sunlight is the best solution, because I do see a lot of, I think red light has a role, as you know, a different kind of role than blue, but I see people saying things like, I live in Honolulu or Phoenix or Miami, and I get lots of red light. No, go outside. Go outside. You can't do any better than sun.
No. We evolved for this. Yeah, we evolved for the natural sun. And
so what have you learned, Lynne, that you've applied in your own life, now understanding what you know about the circadian rhythm?
Yeah, so I've realized that, like a lot of us, without knowing it, I've cut myself off from a lot of these important cues. So I was talking earlier about, brightening the day and darkening the night. So that's definitely
Got
one.
my blue blockers.
Oh, nice. Well, so actually a key to that. So it's, and I'm sure you're probably aware of this, but they do, like, lens makers are really kind of pumping out these blue light blocking coatings on a lot of prescription lenses that you can buy. But if you're wearing those during the day, that's not really necessarily helping out your inner clocks, because we want to really get as much blue light as we possibly can during the day. At night, yes, blocking that blue light could benefit you, but we kind of need to maybe be watching out for that. It's not filtering a ton, so if you're really out enough during the day, even if you're wearing prescription lenses with some blue light filter on them, not a big deal, but just want something to be aware of. But yeah, so I'm trying to just get outside more. Morning's critical, but really throughout the day, just the most daylight we can accumulate, the better. And there's some more and more research coming out, even just in the last few months, about how it really is across the course of the day. Just the more light we can get, and then contrast that with as dark as we can get our nights. Research is finding that on average, we live longer. I mean, that goes hand in hand with being healthier, but really interesting. And then the other components, though, beyond just the light and dark, is thinking about really what else are we doing or telling our bodies? What other signals can we give our bodies that it's day versus night? And if you think about how we evolved, our ancestors were not eating 24/7. They tended to eat during the daylight hours. Maybe there'd be a hunt, bring back the animal, or they're out, harvesting berries, right? They were eating during the daylight hours. They weren't going out in the dark. It was risky and unsafe. And so that's our bodies evolved to really be able to handle incoming calories during the day. And we peak in our ability to do so late morning, early afternoon. So it's sort of the opposite, or close to the opposite of a lot of the Western diets out there, where we really concentrate our calories at the end of the day. We have this big dinner, and sometimes that bleeds into like the later evening hours. And the science suggests that stopping any incoming calories at least 3 hours before bed really serves us well. And that allows us, it'll be easier to fall asleep. It helps our inner clocks stay in sync, and it improves our metabolism, less likely to develop metabolic disorders if we can really consolidate the hours that we eat, keep it earlier in the day, and then try not to, have that midnight snack or a sip of wine or anything else that's going to confuse our inner clocks. So I think it's the kind of the 3 C's is what I've talked about. So it's that contrast of light and dark. It's constricting your meal times. And then the 3rd C I like to talk about is consistency. And this is becoming more and more important. The science is really underscoring that going to bed, getting up, eating, exercising, doing these things at the same time every day helps our bodies predict and prepare for those activities. And that's really going to help our health and happiness and productivity and performance, all those things.
How have these insights led to any change in sleep habits?
Yeah, I really am patting myself on the back. I feel like I've become much better about being consistent. Like I break the rules. I mean, hopefully we enjoy social lives and doing things that might mean, compromising here and there. But yeah, I now try to go to bed between, 10:30 and 11 every night, and tend to wake up and get up around, 7:30 every day. And that shifts a little bit depending on the time of year. Here in Seattle, there is a huge swing in when the sun rises across the course of the year. So it's easier to get up early in the summer. But generally speaking, I feel like I am, a lot more consistent with that. And I really have tried to embrace the meal timing bit. So if I'm at least not out with friends that I'm really trying to cut off, I stop eating anything after about 7. No snacks. Try not to, have that glass of wine later in the evening that I used to have. And I found, like, as I was, wearing Fitbits or other trackers, while they may not be super accurate, they do help you see trends. And I could tell that my sleep, is way higher quality if I would be consistent and if I didn't confuse my clocks by eating too late.
And it helps, doesn't it, to remind everybody this is not a phenomenon unique to humans.
No, right. No, just about all life that we've found evolved with inner clocks. And for similar reasons, right? It's again, if having, I don't know if I've mentioned this yet, but I mean, we have trillions of clocks in our bodies. Like every cell in your body has a clock. And we evolved with these so that they would, coordinate with the environment and coordinate with each other to prime our bodies to do the right things at the right time. So we can, again, handle those incoming calories or defend ourselves from any pathogens that are trying to break through, right? Like if we have our defenses up all the time, we're going to run out of energy. So we have these ebbs and flows in all our body systems. And that's the same for plants. It's the same for animals, down to microorganisms. We're finding that inner clocks really kind of pave the way for survival.
Speaking of inner clock, could you tell us about your book?
Yeah. So, my book, it came out the end of September of 2024. It's called The Inner Clock. And it tells the story, as we've hinted at, I've put myself in the story a bit with some personal experiments, but I talked to hundreds of scientists who helped me understand kind of the basic biology of the circadian system that we now are really have grown to appreciate all the more for how it impacts our overall health, how it impacts our productivity, our performance, whether, you're thinking about your workplace and, when you might be primed to do the best work or have a more productive conversation with a colleague, to if you're an athlete, how can you optimize your performance? All these things really do lean on the health of our circadian system and timing our days. So I talk about, the underlying science there, what modern life has, unfortunately done to keep us from being optimal in those regards, and then what we can do. And there's just really, as I've hinted, some simple things that we can do. And there are a few more, maybe more surprising tools that we can enlist to improve our health and then even kind of hack our rhythms to go even further. Some really cool research coming out of NASA and DARPA and elsewhere from independent scientific labs that are looking at now that we understand this science better, and now that we have this technology emerging, how can we really leverage this to further help human health, and then also think of it society-wide? What can we do about daylight saving time and school start times and these other factors that are affecting us that we may not have been thinking about too closely before?
So what's your opinion? On the whole, the wholesale conversion from incandescent to blue LED, blue dominant LED,
Yeah,
all times of day, has that been on a benefit? Putting aside the energy saving issue,
sure.
the human issue, has it been a beneficial thing or a harmful thing?
I think the science coming in on the whole suggests that could be a more harmful thing. So incandescence, we were getting some wavelengths that we are no longer getting. Some interesting research coming out now about violet light, for example, that is just completely absent from indoor environments, both because our window coatings are filtering a lot of it out, plus our lights are not providing that. And we're finding some health repercussions of blocking violet light, for example. But yeah, and at night, if we had incandescent lights on, there was less of that blue light confusing our inner clocks. During the day, maybe LEDs have a slight edge over incandescent, but again, maybe because of the lack of violet light, there's a lot of variables at play here. But the interesting thing and the unfortunate thing is that LEDs, it's good that they're energy efficient, right? There's a reason that we've made this transition, and that is great for the climate, for our environmental future. But because they last so long, if people have invested in the cheap, standard LEDs, it's probably going to be a long time till they consider swapping those out. And we know now that their technology is advanced, and we can get LEDs that can be way healthier. We can buy LEDs now that are tunable, where we can brighten them, dim them, change the wavelengths to get the appropriate wavelength for the appropriate time of the day. So you can buy one light bulb, have it, bright and blue during the day, and then dim it to a warmer hue at night. But most companies, they're going to buy the cheap one, right? And then that's going to be installed for the next 20 years because ideally, I guess, energy-wise, it doesn't go out. So we've kind of got ourselves in this predicament now. And you think about that indoor lighting as well as outdoor lighting. There's a lot of pushback now about street lights that are a little glaring, you might say, and strong in the blues. So
It's an evolving conversation, isn't it?
It is. Same thing with headlights too. I know I personally struggle driving now with the bright LED headlights that seem to be very ubiquitous out there.
Now, if some listeners want to engage in the Lynne Peeples conversation, where would they do that?
Yeah, you can find me at lynnepeeples.com, LYNNEPEEPLES. And then my book, The Inner Clock, is available anywhere you buy your books.
Great. Lynne, thank you very much for taking the time and sharing your insights.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.